I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order on Monday, October 3rd at 6:30 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to announce that Chair Audrey LaBrie and Selectman Amy Salter will both be remote. They couldn't be here tonight, but they're going to be in the meeting remotely. Because they're out remote, we will do all votes by roll call tonight. Is anyone videotaping audio in the audience? Hearing none. First order of business is Selectmen comments and announcements. And we'd like to start this out with a proclamation. And if Select Board would follow me.
Do you have a mic?
Yeah, take that. That one.
First of all, we want to thank Chief Walsh for the many years of service he gave to this town. It's really appreciated. We're going to hate to see you go.
Thank you.
So we have a proclamation. Whereas Chief Walsh has faithfully served the people of Winchendon as a member of the Winchendon Police Department for the past 33 years, serving in its various ranks, and whereas Chief Walsh has served to the great benefit of the town as the Chief of Police for 7 years, and whereas Chief Walsh displayed considerable leadership in the development and implementation of the relocation of the Winchendon Police Department to its current location at 80 Central Street, and whereas Chief Walsh worked diligently to deliver professional, courteous, and unbiased police services to all citizens and visitors of the town, and for that reason, now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen hereby present this proclamation to Chief David P. Walsh with our sincere appreciation for his many years of service to the town of Winchendon Police Department, and wish him a happy retirement full of continued good health and prosperity. Signed, members of the Board of Selectmen, Chair Audrey LaBrie, Rick Ward, Vice Chair, Barbara Anderson, Selectman, Daniel Lapointe, Selectman, Amy Salter, Selectman.
Get a picture.
You should come over.
And Chief, you will have the opportunity to say a few words after.
I'm going to sit, but I'm going to be brief. As I reflect over the last 33 years, I just want to thank the town and the various boards of selectmen for the opportunity to serve the community. I've met wonderful people, and I think the police department is at a better place now than when it was when I started. I think that's pretty much a shared opinion. Again, I don't want to keep you tonight. I think it feels right, it's the right time, and I think I'm very comfortable with Dan taking over. Kevin, as far as the leadership, between the two of them, they'll do very well moving forward. And again, thank you all for the opportunity, and thank you for the people and the citizens in the community of Winchendon for the opportunity to serve you over these 33 plus years. Thank you.
We also welcome Chief Walski on board.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
if I may, I would actually also like to call out Chief's wife, Diana, and thank her and recognize the incredible sacrifices that she and her children and her other family members have made over the past 33 years. As much as Chief Walsh did, you did a lot as well, so thank you.
A couple of other announcements I'd like to make. First of all, I'd like to introduce Mary Calandrella, who will become our new executive assistant upon the retirement of Linda Daigle, who's leaving after many, many years. Mary, would you like to say a few words?
I just look forward to joining the team here in Winchendon and 17 years municipal experience, so I'm looking forward to the challenges that Winchendon can bring to my table.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And the only other announcement I have, just want to make folks aware that there's a town-wide cleanup, I believe still on Saturday, October 15th, and that's going to be from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And anybody else on the board have any announcements? So public comments, if there's anything on the agenda that anybody would like to comment on, now's the time to do it. If you're here for the school Front Street intersection discussion, we will be taking public comments during that, when we get to that point. Seeing none, the first item on the agenda is appointments, resignations, and we have a resignation from the Master Plan Implementation Committee. Mr. Kyle Bradley has submitted an email with his resignation, pointing out that he's on 3 boards in town, and working full-time just has just become a little bit too much. Anything else on that? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr.
Oh, wait,
Chair?
we have to, yes.
I move to accept the resignation of Kyle Bradley from the Master Plan Implementation Committee and thank him for his service.
Second.
And this will be a roll call vote. Selectman Salter? She may not be here.
There she is.
We'll work down. Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
Selectman Salter?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And moving on, we have under permits, license, entertainment permit, special one-day beer and wine licenses for the November. This is an extension for the Bullspit Brewing Company's pop-up yards, bull yard at 4 Summer Street. They've been down there during the summer, and they're looking for pretty much the month of November. And I see there are no department heads, none of the department heads have any issues. And yes, we have Mr. Jim Hunt and Elizabeth Boutwell.
Yes. So we are just looking to extend, as the weather will allow, into November with the Friday, Saturday, Sunday pop-up bull yard. It's been going very good to date, and we've got a lot of positive feedback from the community, so we just thought we would try to take as much nice weather opportunity as we could.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
this is Mrs. Labrie.
yes.
If I remember correctly, there is a maximum number of licenses that can be issued in a year to any one individual. Will these new licenses put them above that maximum number of licenses?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
That's why we have Elizabeth is going to be on the application. So she'll hold the next 12 licenses. Jim Hunt is licensed for 27 of them, and Elizabeth is going to take the 12. So it's a different person, and it's allowed.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. A couple first. Kind of cold in November, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, we do have heating lanterns, the trees. So we have those around, and I think they've gotten good reception from the people, yeah. So when the sun goes down, it is a little chilly out there, but we have those and the lights, and so people have still been hanging around and enjoying the music. And
That's great. So I guess my next question is, because I'm very familiar with waitressing, quite frankly, and you left out the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, which tends to be a big night for kids and younger people to go out.
yeah, we, for this particular,
Sounds very much like a spaceship or something.
for this particular pop-up, we were only doing Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. We didn't do any weekday,
Right.
any things for that.
But usually Wednesday, only because it's that night before Thanksgiving, and it's
Right.
a huge night to go out.
Yeah, yeah, we didn't, that's something we didn't look at or consider this year, but definitely, hopefully next year we'll be in a different position with our licensing. We won't be doing pop-ups, but definitely something to look at for sure in the future, because that is a very popular night.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many people will want to spend the night before Thanksgiving outside, but
They're young, they're not real
Yeah.
bright. They haven't gotten cold yet.
yeah.
I was cold enough 2 nights ago. You won't see me in November, I don't think.
We're hoping that was the cold has been a fluke and that we get some more warmer days. So,
Any other comments? Questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve the extension of the entertainment permit, an additional 12 one-day wine and malt licenses for the dates listed in November to Elizabeth Boutwell for the pop-up Bouleyard to be located at 4 Summer Drive as presented this evening.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote. Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may, just as a reminder to everybody to speak loudly and forcefully into their mic so that people not in the room can hear it, so it's picked up by the owl. It's my least favorite piece of equipment in town hall. Thank you.
Under new business, the first thing we have is first right of refusal for 911 Town Farm Road. This property is being transferred within the family, and the board needs to exercise its first right of refusal. And maybe I would ask that if the town manager can explain that one to us so we have a better handle on it and that people listening know what's going on.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So for the sake of folks watching at home, there's a term, it's referred to as chapter land. So it's when a parcel of property is put away in Chapter 61. It could be for agriculture, it could be for forestry, a couple other allowances. In that instance, it's a reduced rate of tax that you pay over the time period that you own the property. But whenever you go to sell that property, you're obligated to pay what's referred to as a rollback tax on that chapter property. Typically, what you would see is it would come before the board in another, I guess, park of years of the town giving reduced taxes is that we get a right of first refusal. So that comes in handy if it's like a large swath of, prime agricultural land or forestry or something that you want to preserve. This instance isn't typical, and it's one kind of exemptions or allowances within that, and that if you're selling the property or handing the property from one family member down to another, that's the only time that we waive that. So in order for their title to clear and make this transaction in the family, they do need certified minutes from the Board of Selectmen stating that the Selectmen waived their right of first refusal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions?
I think my concern is, what do they plan on doing with the land once it's turned over to a family member?
Honestly, I don't know, and it's not something, it's private property. So it's not a case where it's like if you had a protection in place, if it was, think of a good example, say like a 20-acre tract of land, and that was in chapter land, they were paying a forestry rate on taxes, and then they wanted to turn around and sell it to a developer that was gonna
But
put...
not selling it, giving it to a family, which means they don't have to pay those taxes back, correct?
Well, so they do the rollback taxes, so that's actually the form that's up here right now. But in terms of the control on what they can or can't do on the property, the control factor is that we get a right of first refusal. So if there was that hypothetical tract of land, 20 acres, we could step in and say, well, we understand you want to sell it to this developer, but we want to preserve that piece of land, that's significant to the community in some way. We're going to put it on the upcoming annual or special town meeting and vote as a community that we're going to buy this parcel, so that way you can't develop it. But in this instance, we don't really get much of a say in it because it's going from one member of the family to another. So in terms of ultimately what they do with it, we don't have much say. It's private property.
Mr. Vice Chair? Two things. One, this family they lived next door already, and this family is going to stay there and raise their young children within our district. I do know that happens to be their plans. And the second is a question, once this family decides to sell it, it's still chapter land, correct? And it would have to go through the town again? Okay, thank you.
So the actual land will probably stay in chapter land? We just have first right of refusal? That's really, I think, basically what I wanted to know.
Oh, okay, perfect,
Thank you.
yes. But they can take it out if they want to. If they do, then they have to pay rollback taxes. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Ready for a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move the board not exercise or assign its first refused option to purchase 2.47 acres or 9.47 acres of land located at 911 Town Farm Road as presented this evening.
Second.
Roll call vote. Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Next on our agenda is the special town meeting warrant for October 24, 2022, and time for the selectmen to vote on each warrant article. So I'll briefly describe the article, and if you have any questions, we have the representatives from the boards that have been here before to answer any questions. So we'll start. Article 1 is a traditional article to see if the town will vote to hear a report of the Finance Committee, and I believe Mr. Kane is going to speak at this town meeting, and he'll probably be speaking on the issue of free cash. And any votes we make will be votes to recommend, not to approve. These are votes to recommend tonight.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes,
How do you want your motion worded? I would make a motion to recommend Article 1.
and we need a second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Selectman Salter, I'm back in the military.
Aye.
Selectman Anderson,
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe,
Aye.
Selectman Labrie,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Article 2, see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $100,000 for the purchase of supplemental downtown streetlight improvements.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to recommend Article 2.
Second.
Roll call vote. Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $145,000 for Phase 2 of the library repairs.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to recommend Article 3.
Second.
Roll call vote. Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $95,000 to supplement the fiscal year '23 highway materials line for the purposes of infrastructure improvements on Pleasant Street, Summer Street, and Island Road.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
I'd make a motion to recommend Article 4.
Could we discuss that first? Thank you. I think I have some questions on whether or not Pleasant Street needs to be fixed. Because clearly it does, Summer Street needs to be fixed. But my question is really on whether we're actually using the money that we appropriated to DPW appropriately in the best way for our resources. And I think, actually I was going to bring it up again when we have the Front Street and School Street discussion, if that's really the best use of our money.
Did you have other thoughts as to where the money might go?
Where what money? The money that's already been appropriated to DPW at the spring town meeting, rather than appropriate an additional $95,000 on top of that?
When you say best use, I interpreted it as you had another idea as to where it should be steered.
No, I'm thinking, or what people are questioning me, and I had a conversation earlier with the town manager, that people are questioning whether we're using those
Efficiently,
funds
whether we're using it efficiently or,
inappropriately, right?
I see. I misinterpreted it, sorry.
Sure, and I did as well. So I think part of the hang-up here may be the nature of the language. So, for example, there was a six-figure appropriation under the Capital Planning Committee going into the annual town meeting this year for supplemental paving. I think it was about $126,000, give or take. And in that instance, it was just worded as supplemental paving. It didn't mention the highway materials line in particular, and so I think it probably didn't trigger that line of questioning. Functionally, it's the same. We're trying to pave our roads. It's a one-for-one swap. We're not buying any equipment. We're not supplementing any hours. We're really not supplementing anything in the fiscal '23 highway material line item. This is strictly for infrastructure improvements for Pleasant, for Summer, and for Island. And so while I always welcome, input or even criticism from the community regarding how we use the budget, it's their tax dollars, and I think they have a right to voice that. I think their question in a broader sense about how the other assets are used within the Department of Public Works is outside the four corners of this particular article. This article is exclusively for infrastructure improvements at Pleasant, Summer, and Island.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And Mr. Chair, if I could go on.
Yes.
If there's anything specific that I could address, I would gladly do it if they wanted to bring something forward.
We ready for a motion?
I made one. It's been seconded.
Okay. Oh, we need a second, that's right.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote on Article 4. Selectman Salter.
Aye.
Selectman Anderson.
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe.
Aye.
Selectman Labrie.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer, or borrow the sum of $618,750 to fund design services for a new fire station. Questions?
I have a lot. But having watched FinCom, and I just want to make sure that I'm very, very clear, because my concern with the fire station project is that the timing is really, I think, very bad for it. But my understanding, and I want to be very, very clear, that should this pass at town meeting, it does not go to ballot to be voted on until May. Is that correct?
That is, well,
It would have to be within 90 days of the vote. and
So we will have to have a special election, which puts it right in the middle of winter.
Correct, January. This would be the deepest extent, the latest we could go.
Okay. So if we pass it at this fall town meeting, then it must be approved, we must have a special election
Within 90 days.
within 90 days, that's what I thought. And I actually felt better about it, thinking they would be voting in May, which is an additional cost to have a special election, correct?
That is correct. It's something that we do budget for annually. We carry that within our budget. If it wasn't used, it would traditionally be turned back into free cash.
And offhand, does anybody know when they would, they would be thinking about holding that special election? Would it be like over Christmas vacation?
I suppose we could nail down, sorry, I'm just clicking through a calendar right now.
December's kind of a rough month for people to get out and vote.
I don't think I looked ahead yet, because I didn't want to put the chicken before the cock. I just kind of wanted to get through town meeting first, and then,
So the latest,
I tend to do that.
yeah, would be January 24th,
Is the latest, you said?
would be the latest that we could do it. But I would think, and I think kind of similar to Chief Smith's sentiment, not that we haven't thought that far, we have, but in terms of going through the motions of actually nailing down a specific date, I think we're waiting until, we'll see if it passes this hurdle. If it does, our clerk's been notified, she's aware it's on her radar, and at that time, I would imagine it would be good for the selectmen to have a conversation about it, to select a date that would be perceived as the most accessible to all residents. I know that, people get a little leery about winter. There could be snowstorms, things like that. There are exemptions in Mass General Law if there are hazardous weather events or things like that we have to work around. But the hard part is we live in New England, and it's just kind of a fact of life.
And if I could just add some information to Selectman Anderson, what she's trying to find out also. Yeah, this special ballot election most likely would be in January. The cost of having, just because everybody should be transparent on this, the cost for that election, from what I hear, would be somewhere between $8,000 and $9,000. Just so we can add that factor in, and everybody knows. But yes, it would have to pass. There's 2 hurdles to get through. Now, even though there's $8,000 or $9,000 additional expense, in the long scope of things, I think the money we're going to lose by putting this thing off is going to make $8,000 look like nothing. Because the cost of materials, even now, construction will not happen till the end of 2023, probably 2024.
and that's our fear, is if we keep putting it off, it's almost a 10-month process even after it
Right.
potentially does pass. So it's before it even could come before the town. So it's quite an extensive process, even after the documents are created or beginning to be created.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And Mr. Chair, I would also offer the thought, it occurred to me, that we do have Mr. Barbaro here, who's the chair of the Capital Planning Committee, if anybody has any questions that they'd like to address towards him. He's not just here for his health this evening, so.
We ready for a motion?
This is number 5, right? Mr. Vice Chair, I'd make a motion to recommend Article 5.
Second, this is Mrs. LeBrie.
Roll call vote. Selectman Salter.
Aye.
Selectman Anderson.
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe.
Aye.
Selectman LeBrie.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Article 6, to see if the town will vote to appropriate $9,560,000, which shall be expended to pay costs of designing, constructing, equipping, and furnishing a replacement of the main water line from the Ashburnham-Winchendon water filtration plant. Questions?
I think the hardest time I have with this article is just not knowing where that money's coming from, exactly.
If people didn't know better, they would think that you were a plant in the audience, because I have before you this spreadsheet which kind of highlights softly a couple routes, just as example. These figures are example only, I just want to stress. And I think that's part of the difficult part of this topic, and probably part of the reason why it's been put off for so long, is that it takes a little bit of a leap of faith, and that we can't really nail down these figures until the state approves this path through the Mass Clean Water Trust. But just as example, and I'll zoom in on them, and once again, these are hypotheticals, just stressing for anybody watching at home. So if we have no blended funding, which is right here on the far left, you have the total project cost at $9,560,000. We are guaranteed a forgiveness of 19%, which comes out to about $1.8 million, leaving a remainder of about $7.7 million. If you add 2.4% interest compounded over 30 years, that's about $3 million worth of interest, which is a total expense of almost $11 million, which would come out to an annual payment of roughly $360,000. And so we would have to find a way to pay for that in the budget. That's the worst case scenario. So there are other elements to this, and we discussed this a little bit with the Finance Committee. First and foremost is the concept of value engineering. So will this project cost $9,560,000 to the penny? No. And I think, me and Mr. Croto and our team, we're going to be working hard over the next couple of years to find a way to get this project off the ground for less than that. I don't think it's going to be millions less, but we're going to try to shave that down a little bit. These are conservative numbers. With that said, we're carrying the highest project cost it will possibly cost. And I apologize for all the caveats, but I just want to stress that to people. This middle example gives you, some blended funding. So here are some scenarios here. Once again, all hypotheticals, no commitments. So if we put $300,000 out of ARPA and took that right off the top, if we went out and got, $500,000 in grants between the state and the feds, not a guarantee, but I think we could bring something home there. The Robinson Broadhurst Foundation, I had a preliminary conversation with their local group today, no commitments, but I kind of laid it out for them, said, hey, this is a community good. Is this something you would potentially fund? They told me that, per their usual response, that I'm always welcome to apply, which in so many words mean that there's an opening there, I think, if we craft the argument right. And if they gave us, spread that out over the next 3 years before we even got a shovel in the ground to replace this pipe, we could save that up and take that off the top. Retained earnings. So we had a recent rate increase, with the increase to try to build something up so that we could pay these things down whenever there was a capital need or a need on our infrastructure. So $25,000 a year out of those retained earnings. once again, hypothetical, we're still kind of waiting and seeing if we start building up some assets there. But over 30 years, that $25,000 would knock off $750,000. And then, I just threw in $250,000 in free cash to soften it up a little bit. So that would bring the remaining total to just over $5 million. The interest would be $2 million, so it would be about $7.2 million over 30 years. That $360,000 number is now $240,000 a year. And then the last one, I'm just going to shift this over here. So this is kind of a best case scenario or close to it. So the Clean Water Trust, the 19%, that's what we're guaranteed. That's the absolute floor. They haven't committed to anything, but we've heard that because of ARPA and other, an influx of other funds, they may be increasing that number. So hypothetically, if it's 30%, now instead of forgiving 1.8 million, they're forgiving 2.8 million. It's a pretty significant jump. That's a very strong maybe. ARPA, if we did $500,000 instead of $300,000, if we got $1 million in grants, if the Robinson Broadhurst Foundation covered $1 million, if we covered $1 million from retained earnings at $33,000 annually instead of $25,000 over the next 30 years. In free cash, if we doubled that and did $500,000 instead of $250,000. That brings your interest down to just over $1 million for a total of 3.7 annual payment over 30 years would be about $125,000. And so the purpose of this exercise is not to bore you to death. It's to try to illustrate that there are different pathways. It's all the same pipe, but it's how you break down the funding. And I'm confident that if we can get through this first step, which is having this approved at town meeting, we can kind of get the green light to roll up our sleeves and start aggressively pursuing some of these alternate funding sources, because I do not want this to fall exclusively on the back of the Winchendon taxpayer. I do not want it to fall exclusively on the back of the ratepayer in the water district. We have to find a way to band together and get 7, 8, or 9 different sources of funding here to get this off the ground.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes.
And this pipe is only for Winchendon water, right? It's not anything that flows from or to Ashburnham. It's just us and just our responsibility, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Ashburnham realistically doesn't get any direct benefit from this. If anything, we're going to be tearing up their roads, and they're kind of waiting on us because they want to pave that road, but they don't want to pave it and then have us come and rip it up in a couple of years.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at these charts, and I guess realistically, if we wanted to be realistic about this, our eyes should be focused on that center chart, somewhere's in that
That is correct.
range.
I was going to ask if that was a guarantee.
I can't make any promises. That 240 number is something I think I can get to. I'm comfortable saying I'm pretty sure I can get to that. No guarantees. We could do better than that, but I think we could get to that number if we could get buy-in from all of these different areas.
When we're talking about retained earnings, those come out from the water users exclusively, correct?
Correct. And that's kind of part of the broader conversation we've been having about why we need to increase the rate, not just to break even, but to get some money set aside for when we need to fix these things. So when you see that $25,000 annually, that's not me saying we're going to increase the rate for the purpose of getting that $25,000. That's me based on the hope that the work that we did collectively over the past year and a half or so would help us build up those retained earnings so that we would have that set aside for a rainy day. So that is not representative of a further increase, but it is speculative.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes.
I would make a motion to recommend Article 6.
Second. Sorry.
Roll call vote.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Could I have the motion again?
I'd make a motion to recommend Article 6.
Recommend.
Yes.
Thank you.
Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $110,593 to the OPEB trust account that was established to mitigate the town's liability for other OPEB issues.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to recommend Article 7.
Second.
Roll call vote. Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 8, to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 40, which essentially is to transfer from free cash the sum of $50,000 to such a reserve account established to mitigate the town's liability for contractual separation payouts or act thereof too.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to recommend Article 8.
Second.
Roll call vote. Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $80,000 to the stabilization fund.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion to recommend Article 9.
Second.
Roll call vote. Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 10, see if the town will vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $50,000 to supplement the Finance Committee reserve in response to escalating energy and inflationary costs.
Could you explain to me why this is going into that particular account?
I can, thank you. And I actually would like to note a minor change on that, if I haven't already in front of this board. It's been a little bit of a blur. There's been a few different. So this was originally referred to as a special reserve, and I've since backed off of that and just had it go into that reserve account. So I'm glad you asked the question. So whenever there's a situation, and I know you had one coming out of COVID as well, where we anticipate some type of, financial driven impact, something that might hit our budget, we try to build in a little bit extra. And so we went through the budgeting process from March into last May, and we had saw the writing on the wall in terms of energy costs, and we padded a little bit in there on the expectation that eventually it would plateau or even reduce a little bit. And while gasoline's gone down, by and large, I think some of the conversations we've had regarding electricity and other things, we've seen significant increases continue. And so we're asking this to go into this specific account rather than increasing a line item, for example, in the budget, because if we just increase a line item, and I'm not saying we would, but town hall could just pay the bill, right? We're authorized to write the check, and we just write the check. By putting it in the finance committee reserve, we're obligated to go before a board in a public meeting and explain why we went over that line item. And so I think my reasoning why we're putting it in there is transparency and accountability, so that we make our best effort in-house to reduce the use of energy or fuel as much as we reasonably can. When we did it towards the end of last fiscal year, we cut down on patrols, for example, and little things like that to try to save on fuel. I want that accountability there, and I want to have to come in front of a camera and explain to the people of Winchendon why we're going over on that. But I also want to make sure we have funds there set aside just in case.
Any other questions?
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
so Finance Committee has to approve the reason for the spending,
Correct.
and they're committed to I see that they have a recommendation. They're committed to saying yes, should the money be needed for this reason.
That is correct. They were fully in agreement in terms of my reasoning, and they were up to the task of being the stewards of those funds. And also, given that it's going into their general reserve account and not a separate special side pot, they did make it clear and vocalize that it would be that 50,000, even though it's going into that account, would be exclusively for energy costs or other inflationary issues. And I did want to call out the reason that language is written that way is increase in different types of materials that are related to the kind of the global fluctuations that we're seeing. So like salt, for example, if salt doubles, so we typically, if we go over on snow and ice, then we come before the board anyway, but we wanted to set a little bit aside just in case, same reasoning.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve Article 10, or excuse me, recommend Article 10.
Second.
Roll call vote. Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Article 11 is to amend the town charter as recommended by the Charter Bylaw Review Committee. I will point out to everyone that this follows sort of the format like the fire station. If it's passed at town meeting on October 24th, it then goes on a ballot in May, and then the state must approve it after that. So there's like 3 levels on this one.
I think my only problem with this is that recall part. I don't think it's very clear. And I think that it's very difficult to recall elected members when I think 15% of our total voters is a very high number for people who usually show up at a town election. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that number.
Mr. Vice Chair, could somebody give me a historical, little history reminder of how this did in fact change from charter being, and I could probably have this backwards, charter being the years ending in 0, bylaws being the years ending in 5, or vice versa, how we went from that to 21 and 22? I don't remember how that change happened.
Excuse me?
You know how it was that the charter was revised in years ending in a 0, or
Correct.
bylaws in a 0? I don't remember. And the opposite was years ending in a 5. I'm looking for a reminder of how that changed to the
It
years
didn't
21
change.
and the
The
years
charter
22.
still says that the charter should be reviewed in years that end in 0, and the bylaws years that end in 0 or 5. And somehow this committee that was appointed took it upon themselves to also go back and look at the charter, which that really wasn't their purview. And so now we are
Mr.
looking at
Chair?
the charter and to make it line up.
And so I guess I'm not understanding how it happened last year also, if that was 21.
No, this is a continuation of last year.
Oh, only a continuation, not new? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Audrey Labrie. Just to clarify, I don't have the chart or anything in front of me, but does it state that it needs to be reviewed,
Oh, maybe at a minimum.
you know, no later than every 5 years? Or, there's some phrase in there that states it can be reviewed at any time, but no, it can't go any longer than a certain
That's
length of time.
That's a good
Is
point.
that correct?
I think that's correct, Audrey.
Okay, thanks, Barbara.
And additionally, if I could just add something, Mr. Chair or Mr. Vice Chair, I think part of the reasoning for this one is a little unique in that they did review it in 20. You're coming out of COVID year. It was approved at the annual town meeting in 21, and then it failed to make it to the ballot. So this one's kind of a little different, but point taken.
But I'm still not comfortable with the recall that 15% number, I think, is extraordinarily high, considering, I think, if I remember right, when Wendy came before us, we have like, and maybe Rick, you know, I want to say like 5,000 registered voters, but only 300 show up at a local election. It's a crazy number like that. And so to recall somebody, you're asking for 15%, which is a very high number, very difficult to reach and attain. Not that I think a recall should be easy, but it shouldn't be unattainable either.
And I don't have a preference in one direction or another, genuinely, but I do think the reasoning of the committee, not to speak for them, was that because participation historically is so low, that you could have a year that's so low that the threshold to recall somebody is like unreasonably low. But I get both sides of it, but I believe that is what their intent was. I genuinely don't have a preference.
Well, no, having been through it, and I'm concerned that when the people in town feel that they need to make a change, you know, it shouldn't be a cataclysmic event to recall somebody from office. It should be attainable. You don't do it on a whim, but it should be doable. And I think I'm just questioning whether 15% is doable.
Mr. Chair, this is Audrey LeBrie.
Yes?
Thank you. I agree with Selectwoman Anderson, you know, to a point, yes, it should be obtainable, but in order to recall an elected official, you know, that's it's a pretty serious undertaking. And I would like to think that a high enough percentage of the population would be behind it before it moves forward. We've seen how small groups can influence, you know, potentially influence town meeting because it's such a small number and such like that. I do understand both sides, but I feel it needs to be accessible, yes, but also it can't be done lightly. It's got to have a high enough threshold to have some teeth. Thank you.
Any other questions?
One moment, please.
I can kill the air in between, I don't mind speaking. So by example, what I'm running through in my head is, so say if you had an unusually low year and 300 people voted, that would mean you would only need to get 60 people together in a community of 10,500. You would need 60 people to recall somebody. That's very low, as written. Do you need more time? I can keep going.
No.
Sing a bit.
Well, that's just to sign the petition, correct?
I think as written, it's for a recall. Votes cast in favor of the recall.
No, it says registered voters, not the most recent annual town election. That's been crossed out.
Yeah, correct. It's just not a percentage of the registered voters at that time, and this is just to sign the petition, correct?
Yeah, I don't see 15% as being too high. I mean, when you think of a recall, there has to be some serious stuff going on. And you're going to recall a person, you need to get a vast majority of the town out there to do this. I don't want to have candidates or a selectman or school committee members out there being thrown out of office for 100 people when we've got, I think we're close to 7,000 registered voters. It should be, you know, at least 1,000 of those. Or it should be, if you have done something so egregious that you need to be thrown out of office, then this town will get together and they will get you out of office.
But
But
I
if
feel
you-
like we're increasing it as to the past, and I'm not sure there's a valid reason as to why.
Because before it was based on annual town elections, how many showed up for election.
And did it pose a problem?
Yeah, when you only have 15% of 300 people, yeah, that's not good. You're going to have somebody
But
thrown out of office for 60
I think if the
votes?
people active in government on a regular basis want us out of our chairs, they should have a mechanism to do so, and it shouldn't be insurmountable. That's just my...
It's not insurmountable to get that amount. If you're going to go door to door, you can get those.
I know, we got them.
Yeah,
Done it.
so
Yeah, we
if
did
we've
it.
done it before, or some
But
folks have done it.
I think what
but-
I'm questioning, so you need that 15% signatures verified at the town clerk's office, but if I'm reading it correctly, once we hold the ballot, it's just a majority.
It's just a majority, I believe, yes.
Wins the recall, which it used to be that we had to get a percentage at the ballot box, which is why when we did the recall, there were like 1,700 people that voted that year, which is a crazy high number for Winchendon.
To go to the other point, if I may. So the charter says, so there's two sections. 7-6, periodic review, charter and bylaws. Charter and bylaw review. In the years ending in a 5 or in a 0, the town moderator shall appoint a special committee of 7 members charged with the responsibility to review the then existing charter and bylaws of the town for the purpose of determining if any amendments or revision may be necessary or desirable. Such review shall be conducted in consultation with town council or, if the town meeting so directs, by special counsel retained for that purpose, blah, 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 blah. But then above that, 7-1, charter changes, says this charter may be replaced, revised, or amended in accordance with any procedure made available under the state constitution or by statute enacted in accordance with the state constitution. So there is like a little bit of wiggle room, is what I'm saying, just to address our question about 0s and 5s. It does say shall, it doesn't say at a minimum, it doesn't,
Right, it's,
yeah.
the intent was every 5 years, if you haven't looked at, or even years or however it comes out, you should at least take a look at it.
Yeah.
But you're free to do it as often as required if there's major change in your town.
I just didn't want to leave the question open, that's all, that's why.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion to not recommend Article 10.
No. Are we on 10 or are we on 11?
11.
11, I apologize. I make a motion to not recommend Article 11.
I'll second that.
So the motion is to not recommend, so we'll do a roll call vote. So if you're voting no, you're against not recommending. If you vote yes, you're for not recommending, just so everyone's clear on what we're doing.
Wait a minute, say it again.
If you want to not recommend, you say aye.
Right, okay.
If you want to recommend, you say no. Right?
Right.
Okay.
Roll call vote. Selectman Salter.
Aye.
Selectman Anderson.
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe.
Aye.
Selectman Labrie.
No.
And the chair votes no. 3-2. And that concludes that portion of the agenda. Next, well, actually, before we go on to assigning articles for town meeting. I just want to thank the town manager, DPW director, fire chief, and the library director and trustees who showed up for these meetings and provided all the answers we needed to make these decisions. So thank you for what you did. And I want to also thank the public. We don't have too many here tonight, but we've had people show up for these meetings, particularly the public hearing had a few folks show up. So thank you. So I'm going to run through the articles, and we'd like to spread them around so everybody gets something. So the first one is the committee report, and my understanding is Mr. Kane will be doing that one. So to the supplemental downtown street improvements, $100,000 free cash.
I'll do that one.
Okay. Supplemental library repairs.
I'll take it.
I'll take it if I didn't hear anybody else. This was Audrey.
Danielle already,
I volunteered unless you have your heart set on it.
I'm sorry?
This is Danielle. I said I had volunteered, but if you have your heart set on it, you can have it.
Oh, I'll take it.
okay.
Thank you.
Supplemental highway materials, Pleasant Street, Summer Island. I can take that one. Fire station design,
I'll take it.
the OPEB trust account, Article 7.
Did you skip 6?
Oh, I skipped one, sorry. Article 6, the clean water drinking, this is the $9,560,000 for the water line.
I'll take it.
Who said that?
Danielle.
OPEB trust account, $110,000. I
How
can
about
take-
Amy?
Take it.
Whoa.
Who?
Audrey.
There were 3 of
Audrey.
you. Yeah, I don't know.
I nominated Amy.
Separation payouts, I'll take that one. Fund stabilization account, number 9. Amy?
I'll take that one, it's Amy.
Okay.
Nice short one.
Reserve for energy costs fund, number 10. I can take that one also. And my understanding that the charter one should be the charter bylaw
Bylaw
committee
review.
doing that
Yep.
one. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, we're done on that. So now we're up to old business, and this is the final decision on the School Street, Front Street intersection. And I'm going to turn this over to the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So included in your packet was a very brief memo just following up, including some supplemental meeting materials from a 2016 Board of Selectmen meeting. That did provide MassDOT input. Both options showed a full closure at Front Street. And at that time, that closure was supported by the police chief, fire chief, and DPW director.
Mr. Chair, this is Audrey LaBrie.
Yes.
Thank you. Through the chair, to Mr. Saltzberg, I know that after the last meeting, the word was put out again that we were still looking for public input. Did you receive anything further?
Yes, there was one email in response, Mr. Les Goodrich, who was in support of full closure of Front Street. But he did say if there wasn't support for it, that at least one way. And he also wanted to have more markings to avoid the situation we described with people sneaking out on the right to take a right onto River Street, to narrow that so that people couldn't do that and block the path.
Mr. Vice
Thank
Chair.
you.
Just to follow up, I had reached out to Mr. and Mrs. McKenzie, the couple who was quite upset as they left the last meeting because I'm the one that made the motion to table. And she expressed that they were, just in terms of opinion, they were fine with whatever the solution was. They just really wanted and needed the barrels moved because that made it difficult to see, and that's what posed a danger. But so for people that live right there with family, they were fine with any option as well.
So, Mr. Town Manager, at the last meeting, you said you had received 4 or 5 letters, emails.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the majority opinion of all those?
The same thing I just described, the closure of Front Street, and then just putting in more lane markings and narrowing that area to keep people from trying to sneak by on the right and blocking the view down River Street.
And so, looking at what you're recommending for a motion tonight, just like in 2016, it's the opinion of the town manager, DPW, and the police chief that Front Street section should be closed.
The recommendation stays the same.
Yes. Any other questions?
I have a lot. Let's go back to the picture. Because I don't think you're thinking this through. And my problem is, yes, just stay there.
Which one do you want?
That's fine. I think.
You want to go back?
Well, the arrows kind of confused me on the other one. But we're just talking about Front Street. We're not talking about school or 202. So blocking it off, looking at that, if you're going to create a dead end, then you need to have a turnaround area so that people can turn around when they gone the wrong way and realize they can't go out that way. And there's really not one there. There's not really room for one. Correct?
So you could do it in the same way you would see, like at the end of parking in a park or something like that, where it's enough room for a vehicle to pull forward, back out, and do a 3-point turn. If there was like a semi truck that went down that road, they would have to back their way out. But it goes for any time if a large vehicle is going down a dead end, if it's posted as such, which we're going to do. You can only do so much at a certain point.
But I feel like you need a bigger turnaround area for cars so that they're not pulling into that driveway, it's a private driveway, to turn around.
Sure.
And they're not pulling up on the lawn by Clyde to turn around.
So we can like carve out into that a little bit. I mean, there could even be parking put in down here for people that want to go visit Clyde and.
Well, yeah, and I think that would probably be wise.
Yeah.
Because right now they park in the bank parking lot. Because there used to be parking right by the horse, and that was taken away to make the gardens.
So there could be a spot or two that people could use effectively as a turnaround, just so they're not, stranded down at the end of that. But it's, I feel like this little green rectangle blob oversimplifies it, but we're going to put something in that's a little more stylized. I think ultimately it'll look pretty nice.
But again, and I have to ask, is this the best use of our funds? Because Front Street really isn't the problem. The problem is coming out of 12 onto 202. That's where the problem is. And the other problem, you like your little flashy lights, Mr. Croto, that sign, it's covered with trees in the summer, but it tells people to use their directional up ahead. People don't use their directional. So you assume they're going to stay on 12, you pull out, and there's an accident. You can't assume, and people really do, because I counted 3 just walking downtown. There were 3 that did not use their directional, and that's really important because that particular intersection is so dangerous. And cutting off Front Street really isn't going to solve that problem. And what we're trying to do is avoid the majority of those accidents, and I don't really see this as impacting the accident rate at all.
So the directive that I understand from the townspeople is when they're coming down School Street and turning on to Tannery Hill, they want it single lane. They don't want the vehicle to be able to come to the right of them to go down the hill. They want to push the curb out, force it to be a single lane, and have one person turn at a time, which will cause less confusion.
So
That
where-
doesn't make sense in my head.
So where that truck, or is it a truck, where the truck is sitting in front of the big white solid line, that's gonna be the turn lane?
No, that's where it is.
Right, there's gonna be no turning lane, so if you look at how the sidewalk comes across the park now, and you see how they have the line drawn go up a little bit, Mr. Town Manager, you see where they have the crosses? Yep, follow that line down like you did last time, and that's where the curbing's gonna go. It's gonna take all that right out of play. So it's forcing it so only one car can go at a time, taking that turning lane out.
The triangle in the lines, is that what you're talking about?
Right, so we would run curbing all the way down to force it, so it's a single lane.
So then, so where the truck is sitting, let's call that the left, on the right side of the double yellow, what's that gonna be?
The island that the state proposes is not gonna go in at this time. We're only looking to rectify the Front Street issue from the people turning on the School Street and then cutting left to go up Front Street. It's gonna keep everybody staying to the right going up School.
So it's gonna be like this lane.
Sorry.
That's okay. So like that lane right there doesn't really exist?
Yep, that won't be there. It'll still be the existing island that you see now.
Okay, that was causing me confusion.
Right, this is from the state to go make all the changes that they want. We don't have the funding in place for that. So we make minor incremental changes at a time.
I see, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm challenged when it comes to that stuff.
Any more questions from the board?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you make this a single lane, where people who turn right down Tannery are unable to do so and they have to stay in the lane, then you're increasing that flow of traffic coming from the north exponentially, which it's already really bad. Every afternoon, it's backed up well past my house. And you are now slowing it down even more. And there's gonna be people who are really angry. Have you studied that?
Yeah, by slowing down the traffic, you're making people focus, and you're not having it so that the person's trying to watch the person next to them to try to sneak out. It's more of a controlled chaos.
I don't think so.
I mean, for me personally, when I'm coming from that direction, I typically try to go down Grove Street and avoid it altogether. And I think if there's a backup there, well, it's not ideal. It's backing up because you're slowing people down. They're not trying to like jockey past each other, which is causing the accidents, and it may incentivize people to seek alternate routes.
If I may.
Let's wait till the selectmen finish before public comment.
I think more time needs to be spent looking at that exact situation and trying to figure out really what is, before we spend money and say, well, that didn't do anything. We really got to find the best solution, because I don't think that's it. And I don't think that we've really taken the time to look. I know I look a lot because I happen to live there and I can observe it, but I do see when traffic backs up. When traffic backs up is when you get people acting stupid and trying to cut around people that they shouldn't be. And I just don't see this as solving a problem.
Well, looking at this, I mean, this thing has been beaten around, well, 2016 at that meeting, and we had Mass Department of Transportation giving us these recommendations. We had our police chief giving us these recommendations back in 2016. DPW head Al Gallant recommended the closing of Front Street. We have our current board, current folks doing the same thing. I think the only alternative is to do nothing, which is not going to solve anything. We can at least do this and see how it goes. It's not, I don't believe it's going to cause more accidents, and it might lessen them because of the distractions coming in off that Front Street. Even if it lessens a handful of accidents, it's well worth giving it a try. If we run it through the winter into spring, or whenever we're going to get this going for 6 months, then we'll have data to show if accidents have really dropped off. Did it make a difference? I think it's worth a try. I think that's what the public wanted. We asked for public comment, they gave it to us, they wanted that street closed. So I think we at least owe it to the public to give it a try, see how it worked, how it goes.
Can I express one fear? My fear is if we cone this off and we don't act on it, that we're putting another barrier in place to impede vision, which was the problem of the people on the last meeting. My position is it's still October. We could get this work done so that you don't have the barrels and we're not worried about the snowplows pushing them around or so on and so forth. So it's clear cut. That's just my opinion, but it's totally up to the board.
I hate ultimatums, just so you know. That brings out the absolute worst in me. Yeah, it's October. You got a lot of work to do. You got Pleasant Street to do. You got Summer Street to do. You're working on Central Street. There's a whole lot going on. I really don't see shutting this down as a top priority or our best use of funds right now. I don't.
Any other?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Was that to me, Rick? This is audio
Yes.
three?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is great. The public input is very important. A Board of Selectmen meeting is the logical place to have this discussion. However, I personally feel, as I stated at the last meeting, that it should not be a Board of Selectmen decision as to what is done with that intersection. I feel that is maybe opening a bit of a Pandora's box if the Board of Selectmen gets involved in decisions that, in my opinion, would fall under the purview of the town manager. I agree it's a great discussion, but my thought is that the final decision should not rest with the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, name one road that we have not approved. Yes, I approved the Railroad Street debacle. I approved that other part of Front Street that goes by the church. Every single road change, alteration, new road that's been discontinued is approved by the Board of Selectmen first. Unless somebody can name one, and I would challenge it. Pick one that we didn't first have to undertake.
Any other comments before I go to public comments? Would you state your name?
Sure. Tiffany Newton. I live at 332 Front Street, so I drive that section of the road every day. I tend to agree with Barbara on a few points, and I did send an email to the town manager in which I was not sure what the solution should be, but I did not agree that closing the road was the solution. I also feel that the people coming from Front Street onto Route 12 are not the cause of the accident. I do believe that the people who pull down to turn down Tannery Hill are a big part of that accident, but as somebody who pulled out of that road every day, it was not the people coming off Front Street doing that. It was the people racing down Route 12 to cut off everyone who might be waiting their turn to come off Front Street, as well as the cars waiting to turn left onto 202. So I do believe that narrowing that into one lane coming from Route 12 and from there would make a difference. But I don't think closing that road makes a difference, as well as if you do close that road, and they talked about backing up some of the traffic, now making it one lane, which I think there would be some backup traffic. I don't think it would be significant, but now we're coming off of School Square, and now it's difficult to get out of School Square because there's no stop sign, as well as the vision there, the sight lines aren't super great. I know from now coming off of that for however many months, Front Street's been closed, it can't go down that way. So I think if you do decide to close that road, then you also need to look at School Square coming onto School Street, because that's now going to become a major issue as well. So while I don't necessarily have all the answers or the right answer, I just have my input from driving that street for the last decade and living there and seeing what happens. So you can take that for what it's worth. But
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to comment on this? Then I'll entertain a motion.
Why are you looking at me?
And if I don't hear one, I'll make one myself. I agree with Audrey that we might be stepping into some micromanaging, but because I'm going to make the recommendation that the DPW and town manager are in line with, and the police, I feel we're on good ground. So I move to recommend that the town manager authorize the DPW to close Front Street in both directions, as well as provided designated turning lanes onto River Street from School Street as recommended by Mass DOT, Winchendon Police, and Winchendon Fire.
Mr. Vice Chair,
Yes.
could we add something to the effect of, after exploring solutions for the expected School Square, something?
I'm not
Just
sure
as
which-
exploring options to solutions. I agree with Ms. Newton, that's going to be a problem, letting that traffic onto whatever that street is, Route 12.
School Square.
No,
onto
trying to get
School
off of
Street.
School Street, onto School Street. I agree, that's probably going to be a nightmare for that small number of houses. So I just
Kind of a
want to
nightmare
add that
now.
we authorize them to do it just
So-
after exploring solutions to the problem that will be created for School Square.
So you're asking them to review the impact of closing Front Street, what that impact's going to be on School Street.
I'm asking them to just think of potential solutions for the traffic coming off of School Square. That's all.
So-
So it's still authorizing, it's just putting in writing, please look at that impact and come up with some sort of potential solution. That's all.
So in this moment, and I don't typically like to do things on the fly, but we could potentially even, if there's, part of the concern is School Street backing up along here, painting out a grid on that side to make sure, or something, a sign saying stop here or don't block, intersection, something on those lines to allow vehicles to come and go as they need to. A majority of the flow of traffic does come down 12. So if people back up here, they'll at least have a fighting chance to get into this stream of traffic or to cross across onto Court Street and cut down if they're looking to get, down to Central Street or something along those
It
lines.
would be better than nothing, but I hadn't thought of it, but I do see that they'll never get out of there. That's all. So still authorizing, but just,
Did you get that? Okay.
thank you.
So I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Get my list here. I'm going to. Selectman Salter.
Aye.
Selectman Anderson.
No.
Selectman Lapointe.
Aye.
Selectman Labrie.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Okay. Now, our next item was to look at the alignment of the goals and objectives for the Board of Selectmen Town Manager and align them with the evaluation sheet. At this time, Chair Labrie has sent out a request to get input on this. She did it twice. She still has received nothing from any board member. So I make a motion that this issue be tabled until the chair receives recommendations from board members.
Second.
I don't think I got it. I never got a request for recommendations.
There were emails, and Chairwoman Labrie correctly, starts it with "don't respond," don't do a reply all, because it would be a violation of open meetings. So look at the beginning of the emails. It starts
Just
with
send it
that.
to her.
Yeah.
So we have a motion. Hello?
Was that question addressed to me? This is Audrey.
Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Daigle sent one out a couple of weeks ago prior to our last meeting. And then I did send a reminder to the board to take a look at it and then bring anything you could for this evening. I will check my email addresses, Barbara, to make sure that I have the correct address. I certainly should, but I will double check out that there were at least two notifications that everyone should have received.
Thank you. So we have a motion and second, so to table this until input is received from the board. And we'll do roll call vote. Selectman Salter?
Aye.
Was that aye?
Yes, aye. Excuse me, aye.
Selectman Anderson?
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe?
Aye.
Selectman Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. There are no minutes this evening. Agenda items. We have a half-hour meeting of the board being scheduled by the chair for Monday, October 24th, 2022 at 6 p.m. prior to the special town meeting. Currently, they're looking out to hold it at the town hall versus the school because of noise and distraction. I do have a question on this. Have we checked with the school to see if there's a room up there so we can meet there and just go into the town meeting? It seems we're going to be down here. If it's a busy town meeting, which I think it will be because some of the issues on the town meeting warrant, then when we head up, the parking's going to be somewhat limited. So why can't we just meet in the cafeteria or some room up there and then go to our meeting? Just ask you to check that out.
We'll look into it. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's anything on the agenda, and the reasoning may be something that would warrant to make sure it's like recorded. But I'll look into it.
And if there is something on the agenda substantial, being up at the schools, we're going to be able to use more time because we don't need much time to get into the town meeting.
Valid point.
So, and our next regular meeting after this, other than that one before town meeting, is November 14th. And I will not be available for the November 14th meeting, just so you put that on your mind. So having said all that, we're ready for exemption, to go into executive session for exemption number 2, to conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union employees and to reconvene into public session for the sole purpose of adjournment, subject being police chief position.
Mr.
Town
Chair.
manager?
This is
Yes. Audrey?
I was going to say so moved if someone else didn't say it already.
Okay, I'm not making the motion, I'm just explaining it. So,
Mr.
We'll accept
Chair,
the motion.
I move to enter into executive session under exemption number 2 to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union employees and to reconvene into public session for the sole purpose of adjournment, subject being the police chief position.
Second.
Okay, it's been made and seconded. Roll call vote.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Selectman Salter.
Aye.
Selectman Anderson.
Aye.
Selectman Lapointe.
Aye.
Selectman Labrie.
Aye.
And chair votes aye. We're now going into executive session.